Elevator game is a really nice idea, but unfortunately the execution was pretty poor. There are some positives about this film, and I will highlight those in a moment, but unfortunately it had a lot of potential and it just didn't deliver. This is a horror film from 2023. It's directed by Rebekah McKendry and it's written by Travis Seppala. And it's about the elevator game, which I had never heard of, but apparently this is a thing. And basically you ride an elevator and you go to different floors in a different sequence, and if you play the game properly, then you'll get access to this other world, and if you don't play the game properly, terrible things are going to happen. It sounds like a fantastic idea. Elevators are terrifying. I think I speak for many people when I say that they are very scary. Mostly, though, because of the fear of getting trapped in them rather than because there's some demonic character lurking in the shadows. But I did like the concept. And there were a couple of times, interestingly more so towards the beginning of the game, when it was interesting and atmospheric and a little bit creepy. In fact, very creepy to begin with. But unfortunately, as the film went on, I realised that this was really poorly executed. So I will praise various elements in a moment, but the reason it's poorly executed are threefold, mostly. One, it's just not scary. As I said initially to begin with, when we first approach the elevator, it is a little creepy, and I think that's more so the anticipation, the excitement of wondering just how spooky and creepy and terrifying it's going to become. And unfortunately, the answer to that is not very. The second of two reasons why it doesn't work is because we don't actually spend that much time in the elevators anyway. And I feel like they tried too hard to give the narrative more substance, to set scenes outside of the elevator, to make the characters seem like they had these fascinating backstories, but all that does is detract from the main horror elements. And honestly, they could have chopped off 20 minutes of this film. The film is over an hour and a half, and it really doesn't need to be. They could have chopped off 20 minutes or more here and there and given us more time at the elevator and more time playing the game, and that might have heightened the horror aspect, because we have too much time away from that. We have too much time for our racing hearts to slow down. And that means that it's very difficult for our heart rates to increase again once we do return to the elevators. And I think that that plays a big role in the fact that the film's just not very scary, because there is so much fluff. We have far too much downtime. And the third reason that I don't think it works very well is because the characters are boring. Those fluff scenes could have been okay if I cared about the characters, but I really didn't. And that's not to say I disliked them. There wasn't one character who I actually disliked, which is a good thing. I didn't feel anything towards any of them, but I didn't dislike them. Nobody irritated me, so that is a good thing. But I never connected with any of the characters. And there was one character maybe there was the potential to connect with. I won't say which characters. I don't want to give away part of the narrative in case you do decide to watch it. But it never quite went that far for me. So we have a great idea, but it's not very scary. We spend far too much time away from the elevator, and that means that we have too much time to calm down. Maybe if we spend more time at the elevator, maybe our heart rates would increase so much, and if we don't get the time for them to drop back down a bit, maybe the horror aspect would have been a little bit stronger because there's no breathing space. I still don't think it would have been terrifying, but it might have been a little bit more intense. And then we have some really bland characters, and that just means that I wasn't really bothered about any of their journeys. I didn't care if any of them made it to this other world or if they died in the process. I wasn't bothered. I didn't care. However, I did say there were some positives about this film, and it's only fair that I mention these. We do have some really great camera work. We have some brilliant music and sound effects, not so much that it becomes horrifically atmospheric, but it was quite nice. And the use of light, particularly the red light, I thought was really, really effective. The performances as well were pretty good. I may not have cared for any of the characters, but I do think the performances were quite strong. And I think had they tightened up the narrative, discarded the unnecessary fluff, and maybe increased the horror, just amplified it a little bit. Okay, maybe a considerable amount, but there is a lot of potential there. And this film could have worked so well. And unfortunately, it just didn't. I can't say it's a terrible film because there are some positive aspects, some things, as mentioned, that I thought worked quite well. But unfortunately, in general, Elevator Game was a nice idea, but not a great execution.